This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
We have been chatting a bit about the home where Chris Watts murdered his wife and family in, and it's just being resold, getting opinions and just kind of discussing feelings about, would you do that? Would you live in a place like that? I'm going to talk to a psychologist about this and kind of get some thoughts on just that. What does it take to be able to live in a place where a tragedy took place, a stigmatized property, as it would be called? Dr. John Delatorre, licensed psychologist, joining us. What's your thoughts on the new happy home where not such happy things happened?
Well, I think, it's such a unique aspect. I think we have a lot of things that are happening at the moment when it comes to real estate. But one of the curious things that I think a lot of, maybe not a lot, maybe a subgroup of true crime junkies would actually want that house simply because it has that background. So I think you have a subset of individuals that would be willing to purchase that house and make it sort of a monument or museum to the tragedy that occurred there. But I think also people have a tendency of believing that there's a lingering kind of energy when it comes to a tragedy that befalls an entire family that might prevent the house from being sold. And I think generally people have an idea related that if something bad happens in the house, that the house is never quite ready to be lived in again until such time that people can kind of forget that that's what the house is known for.
And if you have the knowledge, can you ever really truly forget that, though? I mean, I could see ending up in a house where you don't know the news story about it. You never looked it up. No one's ever informed you. Maybe you find out information about it 20 years later. But to go into a home like that, and I agree, there is a subset of people who look for homes like this. It's the same with haunted houses as well. There's people who hear of a home being haunted. They actually, it's a selling point to them. Specifically on a murder house, though, and even if you are a true crime junkie, what does that say about the psyche of the individual who would actually want to go and not necessarily make it a museum, but make it their home?
Well, I think there are multiple things that I think could be going on within someone. The first one would be that they believe themselves to be of such a nature where they can overcome the negative energy that might be contained within the house, or they don't believe in energy at all, that the house is just a thing and that something happened in the house, but that doesn't taint the house as just simply an object. But I think others, you kind of get a sense of how someone experienced life when you see the world the way in which they saw it. And by that, I literally mean if a crime occurs in a house, you can see how whoever committed the crime, you can see how it played out. You can see the rooms that they interacted with. You can see all of these things. And in some ways, it connects you to the person, that you can have this experience of witnessing, right? Seeing the rooms in which all of this stuff happens, and it makes it real. And in that reality, you can kind of understand how people kind of lived this kind of life. And so I don't know, it's such a unique thing when someone buys a murder house or a haunted house. Like, it's such a unique aspect, a curious thing that I don't think has been well studied.
No, I mean, it is interesting. And ghosts are also kind of an interesting topic I like to talk about as well as some other podcasts. But I mean, we're talking if we're just talking physicality here, it is just a building. But we do see buildings like this destroyed. The building in Utah, the home where the murders took place of the 4 college students, Dahmer's house, BTK's house, a lot of things like that. And Dahmer was an apartment building. I want to clarify that because I know people will try and correct me. People eventually just sometimes get rid of these properties because of what occurred on them. Is there anything to there actually being energy in a home after something like this happens? Have you ever heard of stories or had any clients that maybe didn't know that a home had something happen in it and then maybe started having issues, maybe some sort of psychological issues or mental or emotional issues without really much explanation as to where it came from, other than They connected the dots and discovered a tragedy. It took place where they lived.
Yeah, not going too much into the paranormal aspect of it, which I think we can have a long discussion on that kind of issue. I think sometimes it really is about how the environment influences you to experience something that, let's say you don't know that the house, that there was a murder that occurred in the house, but the neighbors around you, they know, right? That they remember what it was like when the police showed up and stuff like that. So when you move in, there's automatically an interaction that is different than it would have been had the house not had that thing in it. So is it energy? Potentially. I think that's a different podcast, but I think it's also the community that you enter in. If you didn't know that something happened in that house, the community interacts with you a little bit different. And because it interacts with you a little bit different, you get suspicious about why that might be. You start thinking about all the different things that could be happening, and then potentially you start researching everything that's gone on in the neighborhood, and then you discover that something had occurred, and so that changes your perception. So I think it's that outside influences sort of tells you that something is amiss, and from that, then you can start researching.
Like unspoken cues, if you will, and you just start to feel, I don't know why my neighbors are looking at me weird or what have you. Things where people don't necessarily verbally have to tell you the story, just the interactions that you get from community is what could end up making you almost feel paranoid or that there's something off without actually having an experience or reading the history.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Always appreciate John being on, giving his insights into these cases. You want to weigh in? You can do so and call toll free 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537 to share your insights or opinions on the cases that we're following for you. If you'd like an ad-free experience, you can get it through Apple Podcasts right now. You can try it for 3 days free with your subscription. Check that out right there and get everything commercial free delivered directly to you. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.